So I really think that for our spirit, their awareness is in a sort of a cubic space-time, or they experience time as a cube. So we experience time to the first power, they experience time to the third power, just like our spatial dimensions are to, we've got a three-dimensional space. So whatever amount of space there is, it's a cubic space. So they have cubic time equivalents, probably. I'm sure there's much higher than that as well, but the ones we're most closely connected to, because we're moving through cubic physical space, is the cubic time space. And so why this matters potentially is that when we're interacting with spirit, it's indirect. I think spirit kind of dominates in a time frame that's much different to ours, and a space that's much different to ours. So if you think of like the end game for most universes, it's all black holes. So that's when spirit is going to be most prevalent, I would imagine, after most life has died and everything's run by black holes. Now, when you have black holes, they sort of suck up all the space in the universe. All the fabric gets sucked into the one-dimensional unit of the black hole, and time becomes really elongated. They exist over extremely long periods of time in comparison to like our lives. I imagine that they form a sort of network where, although space is hard to move through, as they form, as some of them get close to collapsing into each other, they're going to start beating on that fabric and start piercing the thin fabric with their powerful vibrations. And there are many theories that time gets warped as you near a black hole. And it's possible, maybe, that spiritual vibrations are small enough to slip through these holes in the fabric, these minor holes. It's all about scale at the end of the day. And when you have bigger holes and tighter spiritual vibrations, you can probably pierce it. And so then they start traversing through time and start interacting with other universes, probably. That's my current thought on it. And they can build networks with these black holes to keep them stable so that they don't collapse. And they'll probably slingshot around each other, trying to keep the momentum going as long as they can, because life is precious and we want to stay together as long as we can. I'm sure they realize that they're spirit and they'll be fine if they get sucked in. But, they want to stay with the people that they've been around, so they don't want to really experience another true death. So I think that's happening. So when we're interacting on a spiritual level, I think what's happening is for them time is very fine. They can view it and move through it with ease in much the same way that we move through our physical space. And so I think when we're interacting, our shadows are actually incredibly important when we're interacting with spirit, because our shadow is not an instantaneous thing. It appears instantaneous to us because light travels at a much higher frame rate through space-time compared to us. But if you slow that frame rate down, or you approach the frame rate of light itself, which you would, in fact you probably, if you maintain awareness, you would actually speed up past the frame rate of light as you approach a black hole. And so when you do that, you can start moving within the light wave itself. So if you shoot out a frame rate of light from the endpoint of a light beam, it's going to travel at that speed through whatever fabric is there. Because everything's relative, right? So for them, light's moving super slow, and they just keep moving around it. And so what's happening with that, they can pull with their energy density they can affect the minute vibrations of space-time, and so they can sort of bend the light a little as it travels. So they're bending the minor vibrations in your energy field as it moves off of you and into your shadow. Because your shadow is essentially just an area of lower light density, because light hasn't been able to quite pass through your body. So as it's moving through, it's going to affect that. So I think your shadows are actually very important. So if you're aware of the lighting area in your room and where you are, wherever you're meditating or whatever you're doing when you're interacting with the spirit, pay attention to your shadows. Pay attention to the surroundings. Pay attention to your body, of course. And you'll start to notice the pull of those very minor fluctuations in your energy body. And those minor fluctuations, that's where I think you find the spiritual patterns that are coming in from the deep spiritual network of death. Out there somewhere we all die at the end of it all. But that's also how we end up together, We're all together in death at the end of it. And even in death there are vibrations, And so, well, that's a whole nother video, but we'll do it now. So death actually has a vibratory frequency as well, and that's why I think we find spiritual vibrations in death. And spiritual vibrations would, if you think of a spiritual cycle, or just life and death itself, if you think of energy being eternal and awareness having some form of eternal vibrational state to it, then when something dies, that awareness loses its attachment to a physical body. So it loses all of its physical energy, material, energy content. But the mental and anything above that energy, or awareness energy plus anything above it, or smaller than it, or contained within that awareness, would rise with it, probably. And that is going to rise into a similar vibrational state to what it is, like attracts like in chemistry, because they have similar bonds. They have interactions that can interact with each other. With the spiritual world, it's probably very hard to interact with material because it's just so far removed. But when you have something that's of similar nature, mental and spiritual, they probably vibrate together, and so you end up with a community of mental and spiritual vibrations that continue to persist in death, and they continue to persist and receive more energy into their system as life dies. So as life dies, that awareness and that vibrational capacity shifts and creates a shift in the death spectrum, or what we perceive as a death spectrum, but is really just another life form. Anywhere there's energy, if there's an awareness to wield it, you're going to have life. All life is a complex pattern and conscious control of energy movement. That was too far. So that's why I think there's life or perception of an awareness in death. I'm sure it's a very different environment, and probably blow our minds, or might not. Maybe it's a reduced energy state and it's really just empty, and we're not really aware of much until we're born into a physical body, which is also possible.